When Jennifer Londono, 31, failed to show up for work in Englewood, New Jersey, her family and friends began to worry. Known as a hard worker, Jenny Londono managed the new Luna Lounge on Armory Street. She was last seen in the early morning hours of June 25, 2017, as she was closing the bar. She was supposed to come to work that evening and open the place, but she never did. Colleagues waiting for her at the bar began calling her, but her phone was turned off. This caused even more concern because she had always been in touch and had never been late for work. Jennifer lived alone, and when it became clear that she was not home, her loved ones contacted the police station to report her missing. They also stressed that she always checked in with them when she went somewhere, but this time there were no reports from her, which could indicate that something bad might have happened to her. When they began their investigation, the police first went to the apartment where Jennifer lived. The front door was locked and there was no visible damage. When the police were able to get inside, they saw nothing suspicious. At first glance, there was absolutely nothing to indicate that the missing person's apartment was a crime scene. The place was clean and tidy, and nothing of value had been touched. After finding no clues at Jennifer's apartment, the police went to the bar where she worked as a manager. After talking to the staff at the establishment, they found that Jennifer had no conflicts with either the bar patrons or the employees. Everyone spoke very highly of her and described her as a kind, helpful person. Hardworking Jenny, a woman known for her sweet disposition, was also eager to make something of her life, and her ambition led her to go into business with 40-year-old Rafael Lolos. In 2016, they began operating the Luna Lounge in Englewood, New Jersey. It was a popular bar, and while Lolos was the money behind the business, Jenny was the manager. Jenny had a natural rapport with the customers and was key to the bar's success. They said she was a breath of fresh air, and her happiness was contagious. As it turned out during a conversation with the bar staff, Jennifer and Rafael were not only in a business relationship, but also in a romantic one, and they were not hiding it from anyone. Although they had a close relationship, they had not yet decided to live together. The police found out that the morning Jennifer was last seen, she closed the bar and got into Rafael's car, who was apparently waiting for her after work. It turned out that he was the last person to see her, so the detectives decided to question him. Rafael said that after Jennifer closed the bar, he drove her home. He made no secret of their connection, telling the officers that of course there had been times when they had argued, but this time, he said, everything was fine. They went to her apartment together after he brought her home from work, but after a while he left because Jennifer needed to rest as she had to reopen the bar that evening. After she disappeared, he kept in touch with her family, and together they tried to find out where Jennifer might have gone. There was no reason to suspect that the man had anything to do with her disappearance, and the police decided to focus their attention on finding other clues. Jennifer's phone could not be traced because it had been turned off since the day she disappeared. The last signal from it was picked up by a cell tower near her home. Neighbors were also interviewed, and no one saw or heard anything suspicious. The police contacted the bank where Jennifer was a customer. Very often, the information about the movement of money in the bank account allows to find out the whereabouts and fate of its owner. This case was no exception. When the bank provided the police with the data they were interested in, they were very surprised. It turned out that Jennifer's bank card had been used even after she went missing. This led investigators to believe that she was deliberately hiding for some reason. But Jennifer's family was confident that she would not have gone missing on her own and would not have allowed her family to worry about her. The police decided to find out more about when, where, and what the card had been used for. Meanwhile, 2 days after Jennifer went missing, on June 27th, a passerby noticed a strange object in the water at Pier 44 in Brooklyn. The man who noticed it stared at it for a long time and couldn't figure out what it was. But he soon realized with horror that he was looking at a body, or rather part of a body. The police were called to the scene and the pier was soon cordoned off. Detailed descriptions of such moments are not welcome on YouTube, but to describe the find in general terms, it was a body part from the waist down to the knees. It was impossible to determine if it had been thrown into the water exactly where it was found or if it had been brought in by the current. Divers spent the day searching for other parts or evidence, but nothing was found. The police had to find out the identity of the victim, but it seemed to be a difficult task. The discovery was sent for forensic examination. Upon closer inspection, a tattoo was found on the victim's right thigh, which may have been a clue. The police released an image of the tattoo in the hope that someone who knew the owner would share this information with them. Investigators discovered that the inscription was in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is an ancient literary language of India with an extremely complex and archaic grammar. An expert in the language, whom the police asked to help decipher it, concluded that neither the owner of the tattoo nor the artist who made it knew Sanskrit. They apparently meant to write the name Liliana, but did so grammatically incorrectly. Only 4 days after the gruesome discovery, the police received another alarming call. A passerby noticed a foot on the riverbank near 79th Street. The area was cordoned off by responding police officers. Part of the leg, from the knee and below, was pulled out of the water. Even then, investigators realized that the two sets of remains had likely once belonged to the same body. The fingernails on the leg were painted pink. Divers searched the area of the river where the leg was found, but were unsuccessful. No other body parts or evidence were found to aid the investigation that began after the first discovery. Forensic examination soon confirmed that the fragments found were parts of the same body. By this time, the victim had already been identified. A few days after the police released an image of the tattoo they found, a woman came to the station knowing who it belonged to. Jenny's mother, Gladys Quintero, saw the picture on the news and knew it was her daughter. The tattoo was a tribute to Jenny's late aunt and meant Lily or Lilianne. Lolos drove Jenny's mother to New York to identify the remains. They were devastated when it was confirmed that the body parts belonged to Jenny. Now her disappearance was a homicide investigation. Jennifer's family was shocked not only by the fact of her death, but also by the brutal manner in which she was killed. Understandably, it was impossible to determine the cause of her death. The police went to great lengths to find other parts of her body, but were never able to do so. While family and friends mourned Jennifer and brought flowers to the bar where she worked, detectives were able to find out who had used her credit card. After visiting stores where the card was used and reviewing security footage, detectives determined that the person who used the victim's card was Rafael Lolos, the man with whom Jennifer was having a relationship. They discovered that Lolos had left Jenny's apartment to go shopping on the day she went missing. He first bought a box of garbage bags, then went to another store to buy 2 meat cleavers, all with Jenny's credit cards. Later that night, he drove across the George Washington Bridge into Manhattan, and his cell phone records placed him in an area along the Hudson River. Lolos went home and never returned to Jenny's apartment. It would be 2 days later that the torso would surface. Could it be that Lolos had killed Jenny and used the meat cleavers to dismember her? It was a horrible thought that a man would do that to the woman he loved, but the evidence was compelling. The police obtained an arrest warrant and a search warrant for his home. Anticipating that the detectives would soon be after him, he rented a hotel room and lived there, paying cash. But this did not help him. His whereabouts were quickly discovered, and he was arrested. Lolos did not resist arrest. He denied having anything to do with Jennifer's death, saying she had given him the credit card herself. Lolos also continued to insist that she was fine when he left Jennifer. But detectives began to receive more and more evidence that the man's testimony was an outright lie. A search of his home revealed dark red stains in the bathroom. Samples were sent to a lab for analysis, which determined that the stains were Jennifer's dried blood. In studying Lolos's correspondence with Jennifer on one of his messengers, detectives discovered that they often quarreled, and that these quarrels were almost always motivated by jealousy. When they searched his house, they found in one of the rooms a box from the post office and a bag that once contained a tracking device. It turned out that Lolos was so jealous that he had installed a GPS tracking device on Jennifer's car, without her knowledge, of course. This allowed him to track her movements when he wasn't around. After analyzing cell tower data, authorities learned that after Lolos picked Jennifer up from work, they drove to her apartment together. Jennifer's phone was soon turned off, but Raphael's phone was active. And that same day, between the hours of 9 p.m. and midnight, a cell tower in the Hudson River area received a signal from it. This could mean that Jennifer was dead by then, and the man drove to the river to dispose of the body. Lolos and Londono opened the bar less than a year before her disappearance, but they fought repeatedly over money, even as the lines of their relationship friends, partners, or lovers became increasingly blurred. Correspondence between them revealed that Raphael called Jennifer a gold digger, while his other messages alternated between threats, apologies, and declarations of love. Jennifer's family could not believe that the man who had sworn his love for her and participated in her search had become so insane with jealousy that he would commit such a terrible act. Lolos himself refused to give any explanation, pleaded not guilty, and hired a lawyer. The police were unable to find the exact knives he bought the day Jennifer disappeared, but they went to the store where he bought them and bought the exact same ones. A forensic examination determined that what had been done to Jennifer's body had been done with those very knives. Lolos was charged with murder, desecration of human remains, stalking, hindering apprehension, and credit card fraud. The trial began in November 2019 and lasted 2 months. Prosecutors said Jennifer died in her own apartment at the hands of Lolos after a jealous argument. The prosecutor said Raphael was obsessed with Jennifer and was devastated when he suspected she was cheating on him. Lolos's attorneys, for their part, stressed to the court that the state had no evidence of how Jennifer actually died. There were no signs of a struggle in her apartment, and there were no marks in the bathtub where the dismemberment allegedly occurred. The defense argued that it proved Lolos's innocence, while the prosecution argued that it was evidence of concealment of evidence. According to the prosecutor, sometimes the absence of evidence is evidence. It is evidence of the concealment of traces of the crime. Jennifer's bathtub was so clean that her own DNA could not be found there. There was not a single hair, not even the smallest hair, not a particle of skin, nothing. An ordinary person's bathtub, the prosecutor said, could not be that clean. During the trial, Jennifer's mother addressed the judge and said, "I want you to know that this man ruined my life. She was my girl, my daughter, the one I loved the most in the world. He finished me and he finished my family." After reviewing the case file, the judge concluded that Lolos was literally obsessed with Jennifer. When the judge asked him if he wanted to say anything or make a statement, the man refused. He only talked to his lawyer. In December 2019, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury found Lolos guilty on all charges. The verdict was announced in February 2020. 43-year-old Raphael Lolos was sentenced to life in prison. He would have to serve 63 years in prison before being eligible for parole. This was the maximum sentence he could receive, so he would be eligible for parole at the age of 106. The rest of Jennifer's body was never recovered.